Grab a couple pictures for me.
Welcome to today's conversation with Mr. Robert Jackson.
Yeah.
And this is one of the conversation that I'm really looking forward to. I've been looking at your work. I have admired the work that you're doing. And I remember the first time we got connected at a conference. But man, I've seen, the work that you are putting in. And sometimes it seems as if it will take maybe two or three people to do the work that you're doing. But sometimes that's what it takes to make the difference that needs to be happening, especially within our community. But before we get into
Yeah.
this conversation, Mr. Jackson is a award-winning author. He's a national and international speaker, consultant, and I know most of you have seen the work that he's doing, especially for young people. And but before we get into or have Mr. Jackson share more about himself, he have been in education for over 28 years. Man, that is really commendable, especially when you hear, we need more black men in the space. So that is really commendable for you to be in that space for all those years. And also, I know you have published 7 books, and one of my favorite is this one. Man, I appreciate it, man. This is one of my favorite. I think I still have maybe 10 copies on my shelf that I, often give to especially educators. So, man, I just appreciate you being here. But before we get into the question itself, I will have you share more about your journey, the impact you're having, before we start the questions that I have for you.
Well, I never planned to be an educator. I can tell you that up front. I planned to play 10 years in the National Football League, and nobody told me NFL stood for not for long. So when my NFL career didn't work out, um, I didn't want to be an educator, but the educator wanted me. And we needed to get more men of color. And, I started off as a young man, 28 years ago. I'm in my 20s, and I don't know my front from my back. And, I started teaching at Arlington High School in Indianapolis, and just really start working with our young men of color, trying to build them, mold them into what they need to be. And, I have successful students who've become, principals and other administrators and successful business people, music executives. And, these folks are in their 40s now. That means I started when I was 10. So been in education for a few years, and still enjoy the work because it's not work for me, it's a ministry. So it's a passion doing this type of assignment, because I don't believe we have jobs. I believe we have assignments, and whatever God has called you to do is what you need to do.
That's
And I
right.
ran from this for a long time. I ran from my calling, and I thank God for keeping me. So been doing it for a long time, and like you said, I'm on the national stage and international stage, speaking, writing, becoming the educator they need. Award-winning book by ASCD, on its way to being a bestseller. But the very first book I wrote was called Black Men Stand Up. Wrote that book
Man,
back in 2007,
man,
and
that is important.
yeah, it's still going strong today. And my latest book is Mothers Raising Sons, which came out about a year ago, and I lost my mom in December. So
My, my,
just
my, my
really
condolences to you, man.
thank you. Thank you for that. Really trying to empower our mothers also who are raising these young men. So I'm doing a seminar on the 26th of this month with actress comedian Kim Whitley, and we're going to talk about how can we equip our mothers with what they need to raise successful sons into men.
Man, that is important work, and, because one thing we know that there are a lot of single mothers out there, and they have sons, and they want the right tools to
Mhm.
make sure their sons don't succumb to the challenges that we see happening within our community. So, man, that is really an important work. And especially, for you knowing what it takes, being that you grow with your mom and know the guidance she gave you,
Yes.
so she instills some things in you that you now can instill in mothers so they can see what's possible. So it's not that you're writing because you're writing, you're writing because you had the experience and you have seen a lot of young men, succumb to the challenges in society. So, man, I tell you, I have to commend you on the work. Sometimes I see your speaking schedule, and I was saying, man, how do you get to do all those speaking, with the short space of time? But as you said, man, it's not work; it's ministry. And when you're on purpose for a purpose, the work itself, it's like it gives you strength to press forward, to do the work that you are here to do. And that's the difference with people who are on purpose. It's like sometimes they be wondering, man, how do you get the strength to do all the work that you are doing? But purpose gives you energy, purpose fuels you, and that is important. But we're going to get into the conversation. I'm going to start off with leadership. Being that you have served as leaders within schools and even with your own, journey, a lot of people look up to you as a leader because it's not the position, but the person. And you have demonstrate leadership. So my first question to you on leadership: what does authentic leadership looks like for Black men, and how can we embrace it in our daily lives?
Well, to me, leadership is about, when you make mistakes, because there's no perfect man, there's no perfect parent. And when you make mistakes, stand on your mistakes and be honest and be transparent. I am a father to three. I have my nephew stays with me as well. And, if I make a bad decision or if I make a mistake, I'm first to stand on it. I'm teaching my kids, the power of integrity and respect. And I think men in general, we got to stop acting like we perfect and
Correct.
acting like we don't make bad choices or bad decisions. What we need to do in those situations is teach our children by starting by being an example of what they need to be and help them understand that because I'm being an example, there's no such thing as a perfect person. The
Correct.
psychological, spiritual, and emotional well being of any child is a parent's responsibility. I have a lot of brothers I know who are not in their children's lives, not because they don't want to be. Well, I don't want to deal with her mama or his mama, and I'm not financially stable. And I tell brothers all the time, it don't cost you a dime to take your child to the park. Um, it doesn't cost you anything to spend time with them. And well, I'm tired of dealing with the mama. Well, you weren't tired of dealing with her when you got her pregnant. And if you weren't tired of dealing with when you got her pregnant, women are emotional creatures as well. And whatever you're dealing with, you got to keep fighting for your children. So
Correct.
real leadership looks like, whatever they throw at me, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take the hits. You knocked me down, but you didn't knock me out. And real leadership starts with your thinker and your filler and your chooser. Your thinker is your thought process. What's controlling your thoughts? What's controlling your brain? What are you feeding yourself? Because whatever you're doing the most of is who you are.
Correct.
So leadership starts with us taking an evaluation of who we are as men. Your filler is your emotions, which are feelings on the inside caused by pain or pleasure that move you in a direction. The weakest man on the planet is a man who cannot control his emotions. Because when you lose out of control, when you have out of control emotions, you lost control of the whole situation. And I said the psychological, spiritual, and emotional well being of any family or any child is a parent's responsibility. I can't be a responsible parent if my emotions out of control. And lastly is your chooser. And what makes the man is his choices. I have made some good decisions. I made some bad decisions, but I've lived with my decisions that I made, good or bad. If you hurt somebody, you apologize. If you made some bad decisions, what did you learn? Nelson Mandela said, I never lose, I either win or I learn. So as a leader, what did you learn? What did you learn when you was messing with this young lady that wasn't your wife? What you learn? What did you learn when your child cussed at you for the first time? Well, they learned them cuss words from you. What did you learn when you lost control of your temper? What were you teaching your children? What did you learn? And I think that a leader is constantly learning. A
Correct.
leader is passionate. A leader doesn't keep score, doesn't keep records of wrongs. A leader is in competition with himself, not everybody else. A leader has humility, and you can't live in your humility and your pride at the same time. We got folks who are in love with themselves, who love to boast about themselves and all about their own self gratification. That's not leadership. Leadership is about the people. It's about being humble. If I'm leading people, it's not about me, it's about the people. Dr. Cross, anytime I give a keynote address, like next week, I'm giving a keynote address in New York for the Innovative School Summit. Week after that, I'm doing the National ESEA conference with Title One. I'm giving a keynote address. The last thing I ask them to do is read my bio. I don't need my bio read. I don't need to hear about myself. I need to spend every hour, minute, and second feeding the people. Leadership's about humility, man. And we got folks in leadership right now, they in love with themselves, they're in love with their egos, they're divisive. You know what I'm saying? Leaders don't divide people. Leaders bring people together. So when it comes to our men of color, I was very disappointed that we can't even come together to make decisions about whether it's elections or laws and rules. We can never get on the same page because we're still brainwashed from post-traumatic slave syndrome, not stress syndrome, post-traumatic slave syndrome,
Yeah.
because we have been brainwashed into not loving ourselves. We've been brainwashed into putting things into our bodies that shouldn't be there. We've been brainwashed. When you're dealing with something, smoke all the weed, use cocaine, heroin, drink all the drink. That's not going to solve your problems. A
Correct.
real leader gets his energy from God. And
That's
all
correct.
the energy I get from God, it flows through me to my family,
Man,
because I
that's
got to be careful with the temperature that I set when I come in the door. So, my daughters, my son is grown. He has his own place now, but I have daughters, I have a wife, and I come home. If I come home with the wrong energy, it's going to mess up the whole household.
that's
So
right.
that's what leadership looks like to me.
And thanks for that perspective. I may have to go back and listen to all the insights that you have shared, but I want to say, as you talk about the thoughts that we think, how we feel, and the choices that we make as
Yeah.
leaders, that we have to think from a place, as you mentioned, humility, and
Yeah.
we have to be willing to acknowledge the choices that we make, being that they're good or bad. But I also want to acknowledge that, as you mentioned, that it's not about being perfect as a leader. It's about showing up. It's about doing the work that we know will make a difference. It's not about us. And sometimes, as you mentioned, you have seen a lot of people, think that what they're doing is about us. As we talked before we get on the live, that what's in us, you have to acknowledge that what you got from God the creator, it could be in somebody else, but you have it. So you have to be humble enough to know that you must use it, to make a difference or to impact the lives of others. And I want to also point out, as you mentioned, to take an evaluation of who you are as men. And I believe that is important, because, as you mentioned about our emotions, and sometimes we get so caught up in how we feel, and we let that feeling lead us astray. So I want to acknowledge that, man, but also, just know that you have demonstrated, what you have talked about, what you have shared. Because I think the first time I met you was in 2019 at a conference,
Uh-huh.
and you have been, walking exactly what you're doing from ever since. I've seen you, and that's what led me to purchase. I think I purchased 100 copies of your book.
Yeah.
And I
You have
gave them
your
to
support. I
students
appreciate
and
it.
stuff like that. So, man, it's just a pleasure, to hearing you and the journey. But I also want to acknowledge Principal Kafili for being here. You just tune in, so I want to acknowledge him being here.
That's my big brother, man. He don't miss a beat, man. I don't know how he do it, man.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Wait on this feet, my brother.
Yeah, man. And I tell you, he's been doing the work. I tell you. I also have a couple copies of his books here,
Yeah,
as well. Because he have been really putting in the work. But we're going to continue with the conversation, and we're going to continue on leadership. Um, um, how can we empower other Black men to step into leadership roles within their communities?
I love that. The biggest thing is to deal with the deception piece of it. And deception means you've been blind to the truth. I think that we need to acknowledge that there is a problem out here that we're dealing with, that we need to come together to solve these issues. When you look around and you see our young men of color, I was in the school today, and a young man who I have, his father and I were friends, and his father's in prison, and he just signed with Georgia State. Happy for him, got full scholarship, and I'm in the school, and I'm just standing on the side. I said, "Well, somebody's going to speak at some point, right?" I'm old school, man. I'm used to, my mom, my mom, God rest her soul, man. She spoke to everybody. My family's from down south in Mississippi, and they speak to everybody. I grew up in Indianapolis, and I had at least 400 kids pass me. Nobody spoke.
Wow.
Kids got their earbuds on, and one young man had his head down, about to walk into me, and I put my hand up. I said, "Young man, you need to get off that phone and watch what you're doing, man. You could have got sideswiped. See, back in football, I would have knocked them unconscious, right?" I think we got to open our eyes to what's going on around us. We have young people who have become zombies and in love with themselves. You got to look at those red flags, what's out there. I mean, when you start looking at the issues and you really care about men of color like you portray you do, it seems like you would get off the bench and get into the game. Some people waiting on their qualifications. What makes you qualified? You were born this way. When you were born into this world, you were born to make a difference. God made you an original, not a fake. So you were born to make a difference. Many of us like to downplay different things, and we got to stop doing that. And in order for us to become the best leaders we can be, we got to understand that we got to stop making excuses for ourselves. We got to accept responsibility for what we've done and some of the things we've done. We got to stop blaming other people, stop avoiding feedback. And I'm glad my brother Kafele is on there. I'm telling you something. When
Oh
he
yeah.
see it not dotted or a T not crossed, he gonna say something about it. And I sure appreciate that. And we have many of our young men who are avoiding unpleasant realities. And many of us grew up without a father, and we grew up without that guidance and support. I love my mom, but there was only so many things that my mom could teach me. I need a man there, and many men haven't been taught how to give back because they don't know who they are as men. Many men, when you start talking about some of these things, they get defensive or they feel threatened when people challenge you. You can't be threatened when people challenge you, because when you take a diamond and you put that diamond into the oven, that diamond, it has to have extreme heat for it to become a shiny, beautiful object like it does. And we got to start getting in the heat. And many of our men don't want to get in the heat. They don't understand that it takes heat to make diamonds. Instead, we have many men who shut down. They shut down in conversations about sensitive topics. We can't do that. When we have sensitive topics, man, we got to address them. It's
Yeah, we
almost
have
like
to step up.
family when we start talking about that uncle who's molesting people, or somebody who's been through some family trauma. No, we got to deal with that. And many of our men have not been taught, and that's why I appreciate my brothers like myself, Kafele and Principal L and Tommy Mabry and some of these brothers out here, because we have dedicated our lives to this work. Brian Dinkins and Fred Yakey, and I can keep going on and on. Ernesto Mejia, who is my Hispanic brother. We got to be all hands on deck, because it's going to take all of us to train these men to start training other people. And that's what it's about, training for leadership.
Correct.
I'm not, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than Kafele. It's bigger than all of us. It's about us training ourselves to train others to do what we do.
Man, and that's important, as you mentioned that most of us haven't been taught how to be, and we haven't had the examples around us. So sometimes it's hard, but to go back to what you said, we have to be open to learning and to learn from those who are ahead of us or who are demonstrating what it takes to be the leader within our community. And we have been conditioned, man, to really push things aside, to not really step up and do the work because it's going to rock the boat. It's going to be rubbing people differently. But if we don't address the things that we are supposed to address, things are going to remain the same. So I really, especially, man, as I said, man, I will continue to say, I've seen you on the journey. I've seen you talking to these young people. I've seen you created programs for young men in the communities. I came to one of your programs for the young men, and you talk about how important it is for them to be who they're supposed to be, but also to be responsible. And we have to start, when they're young, again, because as you mentioned, that a lot of us men don't grow up in an environment where we have the example. And if we don't have the example, we're not going to know what to do. We may have the desire, but we don't have the example. So sometimes we get into spaces, we have the power, but we abuse the power because we haven't learned how to be. And if
Hmm.
we're not learning how to be from others, who have done it or who have learned how to, we sometimes will come short and we can't afford going forward, especially as Black men. The world is watching, and now it's important that we come together, come to this consensus about what we need to do to make the change that we're supposed to make. So I want to shift gears from leadership to social impact. So my first question to you on social impact is, what areas in our communities require the most attention for creating lasting social impact?
Well, that's beautiful that you said that. One of the things that I believe when it comes to social impact, it starts with self, and it starts with understanding the importance of giving back, the importance of speaking out and speaking up and speaking often. When you're silent about things that matter, that means you're consenting to it. If you're not consenting to it, then you need to be using your words and speaking out against some of the brutality in our community. Just recently, Target has decided to go along with the status quo, and after they had all these initiatives paying millions of dollars for diversity and inclusion, they said they want to, get rid of the DEI program at Target. That's fine. I won't be going to Target. My family won't be going to Target. My colleagues won't be going, because I'm speaking out against that, because those programs affect me. They affect people that look like me. They affect my family. I'm not going to go to some place and support them when they're not supporting me. And as men of color, we got to get on the same page, man. I got to speak on this, man, because if I don't, I'm a burst. I got to speak on it. Even with these performances, people talking about Snoop Dogg and Nelly and all this kind of stuff, and Snoop Dogg, and I'm real disappointed in you, Snoop, and I want to tell you, because you one of the first brothers I met back in the 90s when I moved to Los Angeles, when I was in camp with the Los Angeles Raiders at the time. You one of the first brothers I met. Cool brother, I've been following you for years, but I'm not with you on this one, brother. I'm not with you on this, because just in 2017, you were ridiculing folks who were not. And I don't want to make this a political thing, but I got to speak the truth. But you ridiculing folks for not going a certain way, and then you turn around and do that. See it. That's not keeping your word, man. That's hypocritical. Respect, honesty, controlling your mind, guarding your ears, facing your pain. These are things that we have to do in order for us to affect our social change in our communities, but we got to do it together. Listen, man,
And
playing football, man, I'm gonna give you another analogy. I play sports, and I remember my freshman year when I went to college. I had a chip on my shoulder because I felt like I should have been recruited higher and all this other stuff, not understanding that God had already blessed me with a full scholarship. Why am I complaining? I can't go to every school. Thank God one school wanted me. You know what I mean? So I get into school, I got chip on my shoulder. I'm playing running back, And I remember I was my first play out there. I'm full pads, and the coach thought enough of me to run me with the first team. One of my linemen missed his block. Okay. I'm a freshman. He's a fifth year senior. Little did I know he was an All American on his way to the NFL. I ain't know none of that. I just know he missed his block. And my little narrow 18-year-old butt had the nerve to get up in his face and say something. I had not earned my keep. I had not done anything to impress anybody at that point. And I remember like yesterday, the very next play, all I remember is waking up. All the linemen laid down and let me get tackled. And I learned a valuable lesson about humility. And I'm going to keep coming back to humility. And as men, in order to create social change, we got to be humble to ourselves and humble to each other. Not only, I just remember I woke up and my arm was over here, my leg was over there, and I had mud in my mouth and I had mud in my eyes. And he came over and pointed to me. He said, "Freshman, you better learn your place because you need me more than I need you."
Wow.
Woo! He taught me
Man,
something that day, man. So from
um,
that day on, I got his lunch, I got his towels, I carried his pads. I humbled myself. And he went on to the NFL, but he followed me in my career, and and I learned humility that day. And I really want my brothers to, in order for us to create social change and what we need to see with social change, it starts with ourselves. It starts with how we treat each other. I'm
correct.
tired of getting on social media and I'm seeing two brothers going at it. I know everybody's excited about Kendrick Lamar against Dr. Drake. I mean, not Dr. Drake, but Drake and Kendrick Lamar, that beef. It seems okay to everybody. It's not okay to me because you have two men of color at the top of their game going at it.
Man, that we have to get past that because we cannot, we should not be participating in bringing each other down.
That's right.
Especially when it comes, if we want to see change, if we are against each other, then where are we going to have the strength to build what we're supposed to build? Because we are
Right.
tearing down each other, so we're not getting to the top. Because as soon as something happened, another person pull you down, and that cannot happen to, if we're going to create the change. But you were touching on something else, that when it comes to us as men, and creating social impact, we have to, keep our word. What we say we're going to do, we need to do it. And because if we're not going to keep our word, how are we going to get things done? How are we going to get or build the trust? Because we have been taught to distrust each other. And if
Hmm.
we're not keeping the word, we're going to build into that distrust. We have to, make sure we are playing our part to bridge that gap so we can develop the trust with each other. But as you mentioned, that about self, when it comes
I
to
got to
social
mention this
change.
too. I got to mention this too. We got to stop selling out for the money. I'm about tired of that, man. I'm gonna die on my feet, not on my knees. And I'm not selling my soul for any amount of money that you have. I'm gonna stand on my faith. I'm gonna stand on what's right, and you can't buy me. I mean, there's too many of us that can be bought. For the right amount. And it's that post traumatic slave syndrome that Dr. Joy DeGruy was talking about years ago. About once you dehumanize somebody, you can terminate them. I said, once you dehumanize somebody and make them feel less than and treat them like less than, that's when you can terminate them. And many of our men are so caught up in themselves, caught up in social media, caught up in the money, caught up in how many clicks they can get. Man, I don't care about that stuff, man. You know, um, I don't. I want to reach people, but I'm not fascinated with how many clicks I can get. I'm fascinated with how many lives I can change. How many souls have I saved? That's what I keep up with. I'm a lion. I don't listen to small dogs bark.
That's
So
right.
I'm not on there as much. I try to, I try as best I can to deal with myself. Man, I just lost my mama in December. You know what I mean? That was tough, man. That was the closest person to me on this planet besides my wife was my mama. I've been with her for a long time, and watching her get ill. But one of the things I learned from my mother is my mom was tougher than any man I ever met. She'd been sick her whole life on dialysis for 34 years. She had a heart attack, coded 3 times, broke all her ribs, sternum, everything. Still came back laughing, smiling. Had a farewell tour before she passed away a week later because she was on life support, still fighting for her
Wow.
family. We got to get into this arena where I'm not getting out of here until we get it right. And once we do that, we're gonna be a powerful, powerful people. We got to stand together. Too many individuals and individual stuff is cool, but I'm gonna tell you something. I don't care how good you are at anything. If Michael Jordan take on 5 people, he gonna lose. If
Yep.
LeBron James take on 5 people, he gonna lose. Jerry Rice is the best receiver I ever seen. But if Jerry Rice go up against a high school team by himself, he gonna lose. We are better when we're
Together.
together. If we hook our arms, can't nobody run through that.
Oh yeah,
But you
man.
stand by yourself, somebody can knock you on your butt. And I
That
think when it comes to this, we got to stand together.
man, that is important, and that is a message in itself. It doesn't matter how motivated or talented you are. And it goes back to even the example, you getting tackled, by the other teams because your peers stood back because of, you lose that humility. But, it takes us to make the change that we see is possible. We can't do this thing by ourselves. It doesn't matter how talented or motivated. There are things that we can do to move forward, but the real change it's going to take us. It's going to take us, um, dealing with it together. But I also want to acknowledge one quote from Dr. Worley. Some of our men don't want to address their own trauma,
That's right.
personal trauma. And, as you mentioned, that if we don't address the things that we have been experiencing or have experienced throughout generation or down in our generations, things are not going to change. We have to be willing to address some of the things that we are dealing with.
That's right. Trauma doesn't go away. Sometimes we suppress it. Sometimes we pretend like it's not there, and it doesn't go away. And man, we got to do better, man. That amygdala is that small almond-shaped structure connected to the hippocampus in the brain that plays a very important role in the processing of emotions, including fear, anger, rage, disappointment. And the amygdala tends to be larger in men. That means we have the affinity for more emotions, more anger, more rage. Just think about it. Super Bowl's on Sunday, right? So you
Yeah.
got the Kansas City Chiefs against the Philadelphia Eagles, right? I can guarantee you 2 things. Well, I can guarantee you one. I guarantee you 2 things. Number one, I can guarantee you there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. Can we agree on that?
Oh yeah.
I can also guarantee you there are going to be men crying on both teams.
Oh yeah.
There's going to be men crying on one team because they lost. There's going to be men crying on the other team because they won. No matter who wins or who loses, men going to cry
That's
because
right.
we have out of control emotions, and it's okay. But you got to will them emotions back in. It's okay to talk about our trauma. It's okay. It's time for you to deal with getting molested. It's time for you to deal with that stepfather beating on your mama. It's time for you to deal with being held at gunpoint or being shot. It's time for you to deal with what you dealt with in prison when you was locked down for 2 years. When you become a better man for yourself, you're gonna be better for everybody else around you. You're gonna be better for your kids, your spouse, your community. We talking about social impact earlier.
Yeah.
We have to get off our seats. We got to get out in the community. One of the things that we do, I travel. As part of my assignment is getting up and down on airplanes. Do I enjoy it? No. I'd rather be home with my family. But part of my assignment and part of my ministry is getting on the road. Years ago, I stopped working full time and I stepped out on faith and I started speaking full time. I have not looked back. I don't operate in the spirit of fear. I operate in faith. Brothers, we got to get out of this fear factor because when you're in fear, and you got to understand the root of anger, it's fear, frustration, and pain. And that's also trauma. Trauma comes from fear factors, it comes from pain, and it comes from a lack of trust
Correct.
because we've been broken.
Yeah.
We've been
Man.
frustrated. And
Oh
when
yeah,
we
man.
with that brokenness and we start dealing with that frustration and we start dealing with those things and we start healing, now I'm whole for myself and I'm better for everybody else.
That is a important point of view, because if we don't deal with ourselves, we're going to take out whatever we are afraid to deal with on others. And as men, we have been conditioned not to talk about what we're feeling, what we're dealing with, and what we have been through. And we see it as strength, to hold back or to suppress those emotions. But if we're going to change or be the best for ourselves and for those people we care about, it's important that we, work on ourselves. That is today, because now you're talking about the fear. Earlier, before the conversation, I wrote down, you can't be scared to go after your own dreams. So sometimes we have the desire to do something, but we have this fear, maybe what people are going to be talking about, or maybe we fail. And it's all a part of what we have been conditioned to feel or to think about ourselves. And when it comes to social change, we have to have the courage, and the willingness to work on self, because
Yes.
we don't want to be in a space not being the best that we can be. It's a consistent work that we have to perform when it comes to us. But if we hold back from doing what we feel compelled to do just because of fear, or because of the opinions of people, or because of what society have said
Yeah.
to us, nothing is going to change. And which is going to take me to my next question, because I think we can be going on and on, especially on social impact.
Yeah.
So my next question to you, and I think you touched on this briefly, how can we collaborate effectively to amplify our efforts and reach more people?
First thing we got to do is leave our egos at the door. Um, we got to understand that we're working together. I'm not working against you. Dr. Cross, just like you followed me, I followed you through the years and you've been really consistent in this work. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I don't sugarcoat that. I don't deal with people, man. Especially if they're not about doing the right thing. And I have watched you. I have followed you. And so social media is good in that aspect where we can kind of keep up with each other, but too much of anything is bad for you. I think once we leave our egos at the door, when we come to the table, there's a collective group of minds, right? So two is always better than one, because you get to bounce it off of somebody, right? So we need to have some focus groups where men can come together and be heard. You can talk about your ideas, but we hear you. You cannot talk and listen at the same time. We have to be able to hear each other. I may not agree with everything you said, but I respect and accept what you said, right? Then we go to that table and we iron things out, and we don't leave that room until we all together collectively. That's how you make a movement, because it's too many Indians, too many chiefs, not enough Indians. Everybody want to be the leader. Now everybody can, you can lead in many different ways. But excuse me, you want to be a leader, but you haven't learned to follow yet. How can you be a leader if you haven't learned how to follow yet? You haven't, and how you going to be a leader? Because people ask me all the time, I want to do what you do, or Kafele say that, or some other folks, or they tell Kafele, I want to do what you do. No, you don't. Where were you when I was in 1994 when I just got cut? I was depressed. I was broken. I was suicidal. And one of my former employers called me to not employer, former schools called me to teach. I'm depressed. I'm dealing with anxiety. I'm dealing with the repercussions of being cut from my dream. And now, even though I'm missing pieces, I'm asked to give kids the pieces that they're missing. For someone to believe in you like that, even in your lowest point, you can be a blessing to somebody else. We need to come together and bring our minds together, and we need to iron out the problem, iron out the solution, and then execute the plan. See, once you talk about the problem, because many times you get in these arenas, everybody want to talk about the problem. It's not a lot about the solutions. Then You get in these arenas where we're not done. We're not talking about the problem anymore. We're talking about solutions, but there's no execution after that. No, we need to be able to put a plan of action together and let's execute that plan. Because that's what people do to get ahead. And a lot of people cheat to win. I don't have to say no names. They put in money and they come together and they willing to sell their soul. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about some God fearing men coming together, talking about the issues and what we can do as men to better ourselves, to better equip ourselves to be better men for our families, for our communities at large, for our children, everything. And we iron this out. And we said, this is what we can do to make social change. And we hook our arms and we stand together. That's how you create change. So everybody has an idea and that's great. But whatever the best idea of that time, that's what we need
Correct.
to roll with. Who has the best idea? And it's no egos. It's none of that boasting stuff. We don't care about all that. It's not about how important your name is. It's about the cause. How important is the cause to you? And it's so important to me. You don't have to know my name. You don't have to know who Rob Jackson is. I just want to be I want to be a soldier in this fight to make sure that we're winning together as a family.
Man, that is important. But I'm going to highlight a few points that you have made because I think they are worth repeating. Especially, we're talking about social change or how, as men, we can collaborate. I think, as you mentioned, leave our ego out of it, because sometimes we do get caught up in thinking that we're the most important person in the room, and sometimes, as you mentioned, that we have to learn to follow before we lead. Look to people who are leading so we can learn, because some of us didn't know what to do or have learned what to do. So to be leading from a place of not knowing,
Yeah.
we can lead people in the wrong direction, as we have seen a lot of our people, especially as you talk about selling your souls and doing things that you're not supposed to be doing for what you want. And that's where, we um, doing things from a place maybe to feed the ego, in truth, to lead the people astray, but also, as you mentioned, about um, plan and execute. We have to come up with strategies, as black men. If we're going to work together, we have to, look and see who can share the best idea or the best perspective or the best insight, and then
Yes.
not only hear what to do, but execute on what we know will work. And if we can do that, as you mentioned, that, man, we would be so powerful, and we
And
are powerful. We are.
collaboration. We got to collaborate, bringing these ideas together. Then we got to share these vital resources. How can we share them? We come together, we talk about what affects us, and we share these resources, and we do it in a way that's going to reach the masses. Last thing I wanted to add was that's when you get on social media and you start spreading some positive energy, some positive love, how we can come out together. Because anytime somebody put out a dumb, crazy video, they get a million hits.
Yep.
We need to start, collaborating through social media and putting out some positive energy to our men of color.
Man, that is important. And I do think about that a lot. Why these negative things get so much attention. But again, I think that also a part of the trauma that we're dealing with. We try to, fit in with the negativity and stuff like that because I think we find it easier to associate with the negative things and not so much the positive things.
Yeah.
And when it comes to change, man, we have to be associating ourselves with what's positive, and sometimes, addressing the things that we know is negative. As you mentioned, we can't just sit back and just not talk about it, but address it and say, especially people that we know personally, we may not have to say to them, on social media, but privately. I said, man, look, maybe something different, to help make a difference within our community. So I'm going to go ahead.
No, absolutely. I was agreeing with you.
Man, that is important. So we're going to shift gears a little bit from
Yes, sir.
social impact to representation.
Mhm.
How can we ensure that our presence in various spaces reflects the values and aspirations of Black men?
That's so so important that you brought that up. We got to show up, man. I speak year round, but usually December I take the month off to be with my family, and I usually don't travel during the month of December. But last December, I decided something right before my mom passed. She hadn't even passed yet. It was probably in November. I decided I'm gonna take the whole month of December and just do student assemblies. I'm going into schools talking to our black males, our black females. I'm talking about all schools, K-12. So I was supposed to do 20 schools in 30 days. I end up doing 33 schools in 40 days.
Wow.
And my whole like goal and method was just to impact kids in a positive way. And it was incredible. And not only did the kids need it, I needed that to be reminded of how important it is to make an impact and do this work. That means somebody's affected by what you did, right? So what I'm saying is we have to show up. I don't care if it's youth programs, community service, after school. If you're not a teacher, we're not expecting everybody to teach, but can you go to the school? Can you do an after school program? I have a conference every year for black and brown boys and young ladies as well. And this is our 12th year doing this conference. Started 12 years ago. We've been moving it around the country. Had it at Morehouse, Indianapolis, been all over the place, right? That's how you make an impact. You give kids an opportunity to come into a space where they can express their emotions and get it all out on the table. We got to talk about mental health and mental health awareness. It's so important that we deal with your mental health because it's just as important as your physical health. But you got to create spaces where folks can do that, not just for the kids. I did the 30 for 30 for the kids, but we need to do that for adult men, especially our men of color. Men of color, we need to be able to go into a space in your city, wherever you live. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a prayer call that I do with friends. I have some other things that I do to collaborate, get on a Zoom, and with some good men that I know, and we talk about the issues. We talk about the. It's cool to talk about sports, but let's talk about how you doing as a husband, how you doing as a father, how you doing as a mentor, how things going on your job. You know, think about it. Do we really get a chance to talk about that with our wife and our kids? They look at you as the leader. They look at you as the provider. I got off a plane just the other day. I was dragging. I had flew to Mobile, Alabama. I did a PD. I did a book signing. I flew back. By the time I got home, I was drained and tired. And I walked in the door, and my daughter said, "What we eating?"
Wow.
She didn't say, "How was your flight?" She didn't say, "How was your presentation?" What we having for dinner?
That's,
Because that's what they expect from us. So men really never get a chance to, talk to other men about their emotional well-being. Talk to other men about you know, anger and rage or what they dealing with on the job, or talk to them about, what they dealing with their significant other. So we got to continue to create those spaces where men can open up, elaborate, talk about those things, and then they become whole again and we better for everybody else.
man, that's important, especially on creating the space, because as men, we sometimes, don't get, as you mentioned, don't get the opportunity to talk about, the things that we are dealing with. And one, we have been conditioned again, to suppress, that feeling,
Yes.
are what we're dealing with. So creating that safe space, as you mentioned, is not just for the kids, but also for us as adults, to talk about the things that we are dealing with, and feel comfortable talking about it, not being judged in those spaces. And I think that is important when it comes to us, especially with representation, because we have to be our best, wherever we are. But sometimes we need that space to talk about what we are going through, or what the work demands of us, or what life demands of us, so we can be the best that we can be in the spaces that we are in.
And I want
Um,
people to know it's okay to rest. It's okay to rest, but after you rest, get up off your butt and get
that's
back
right.
to work. Don't just rest and it's like, I'm gonna stay in this for a minute. No, you gotta get back in the game, man. That's what I love about sports. You see a guy go on the sideline, but he come, what do he do? He go back in.
That's right.
Hard to bet against Mahomes, man. Hard to bet again. I'm hoping Philly win, but man, I can't bet against Mahomes because you know why? He gonna get knocked down. He gonna limp around. He gonna go to the bench, but he gonna come right back in and keep swinging till the whistle blows. And that's what we gotta do as men. We gotta keep swinging till the whistle blows. And when the
Man.
whistle blows, get a late hit. Sometimes they putting late hits on us.
Yep.
We got to
Yep.
stand
Yep.
together, man, and stop letting people in this country just think they can talk to us any kind of way, treat us any kind of way, do us any kind of way, man. We're not going for that. We got to stand up and be strong, man, together. And we got to do what's right, not what's popular. And there's too many people running around here being quiet. I'm talking about people of power in positions. And we got this sister girl speaking up in Texas. She's been the most vocal one speaking up. Where's everybody else? I haven't heard from anybody else because she's being vocal because she's serious about this thing. It's like, no, we're not sitting down, gonna lay down and have this. I worked 20 times as hard to be in this position. How dare you treat me like that? We got to
You-
get tired of being tired. Martin and Malcolm and Megger and Fred Hampton and Kwame Ture, they cannot die in vain. They passed the baton to me. They passed the baton to Kafele and to Tommy and some of and these other brothers out here. And you, Dr. Cross, and other brothers doing the work. We got to keep doing it, man. And if somebody come at me, so be it, man. I'm gonna stand on my feet.
Oh yeah.
That's the attitude that we have to have. And when our young men see that, when they see us standing for something, they're not gonna fall for anything.
Man, that is so important. Um, we have giants before us that we have an obligation to stand on their shoulders. We have to stand on what we stand for. As you mentioned, if we don't stand for anything, we fall for anything.
That's right.
As it's important, man. As you said, I'm going to highlight these things, these points that you just made, because I think they are important that it's being repeated. Do what's right, not what's popular. And a lot of times we get caught up in doing what's popular,
Yeah.
not doing the thing that we know is right, because we want to fit in with everybody else. I
Mhm.
tell people every day, from I was a child, I'm not the type of person that I don't mind. I'll be standing over here by myself.
That's right.
Man, it's important. If it's not something right, I'm not going to stand with it. And it's important, and I want to highlight that part because it is so important. Do what's right, not what is popular. We get caught up in doing what is popular and not what is right. And also, we need to get tired of being tired. It is enough. We need to move forward with strength and being unapologetic
That's right.
about what we stand for. What we need to be about business 24/7.
That's
Although you
right.
said we need to take a break, but even in rest, man, I'm dreaming about it.
Well, sometimes you got to decompress and rest. But John Lewis said it's nothing. The late great John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, says nothing wrong with getting in good trouble.
That's right.
As long
That's
as
right.
it's good trouble, then I'm all for it. Because we don't mind getting in bad trouble in the past, and many of us have been in some trouble. Let's get in some good trouble and stand for something or fall for anything. And my mom didn't instill that in me, and I've watched some things. I've been treated a certain kind of way in this country, and I'm tired of it.
Man,
Somebody's got to step out on faith. And guess what? You talking about doing what's right. You know how many times I got beat up in my neighborhood as a kid, man, because I didn't do what everybody else was doing.
that's
I was
right.
like you, man. I'm not going to be selling drugs and killing my people. I'm not going to be disrespecting women and doing all the stuff you're doing. So I became a target, and I got beat up a lot, So,
Right.
that they ain't do nothing but toughen me up and make me stronger in my faith because those guys who beat me up and did all this stuff, they dead or in prison. I'm still here. And they did it because they were brainwashed. They were brainwashed to think that because you're smart, you stupid. Because you're smart, you're a target, or because you're smart, now you a white boy. What the hell does that mean? That sounds
Yeah,
crazy. You
it
know, so
it is.
knowledge is your power.
Yep.
I say your knowledge is your power. And when you think about our leaders, even Huey Newton, he was Dr. Newton.
Yeah.
You know, these were smart young men. These were young men and
Yep.
who stood out on faith. You know, Martin, Malcolm, Megger, these are young men stepping out on faith. We got folks who are stuck in their ways, man. They too
Yeah.
scared to say anything, man. Your silence is consent. Stop being scared and walk in faith. And we walk by faith and we walk together, we're gonna be stronger than ever.
Oh yeah, man. We man, we could finish the conversation right there. Man, that is so important. A great reminder to all of us that are on the journey or who want to see change. We have to step up and do the work. It's not going to be the same
Yep.
work like what everybody else is doing, but if you know what's right, you got to do what's right and not, what is popular and get caught up with the masses and lose our way in the process. We can't afford that as we go forward.
Yes,
And
sir.
I'm going to, ask, let's see how many more questions we can get in before this conversation finish. But I want to ask this question: why is it? And I think you kind of cover this question to some extent, but I'm still going to ask it because I know, especially those who are listening or who will be listening, it is important. Why is it important for Black men to actively mentor the next generation?
It's important because um, Father Time is undefeated, and somebody's got to continue to carry the torch. And I said Father Time is undefeated because I have been around some of the best athletes and people in the world. You know, the John Lewis's, um, you know, I met Moses and Moses track star and just so many Jerry Rice. I don't care who I've met. And I'm looking at the great LeBron James. No, is he the greatest? No, not to me. It's Michael Jordan. Let's make that clear. But I look at the great LeBron James, who's doing great things at 40. He can't do it forever. They just signed Luca, and they signed Luca because somebody got to carry the torch. Somebody's got to be the face of the franchise. So they're looking toward the future, and they say Anthony Davis is not the future. We're gonna choose Luca. So it's important because nobody's going to do it forever. Not even Rob Jackson, not Dr. Cross or anybody else. If you're not training people behind you to take your place, you tripping. You got to
Man,
know when to get off the stage, man. Everybody in your circle is not in your corner. You should be training somebody to take your place. I can start naming folks. If you can't name people that you training, you tripping. I can name Dr. Torrey Barber. I can name Fred Yakey, Dr. Brian Dinkins. I can keep going because I'm training these young men to come up and not only do this work, but somebody's got to take your place at some point. So mentorship is important because even the mentor needs to be mentored. Everybody should be coachable because you can't do it all by yourself. Because when Rob Jackson leaves this earth, the work still remains. When
yeah.
Dr. Cross leaves, the work still remains. If you haven't trained anybody to do it, you're failing. When Dr. King left, there was a big hole left in the movement because nobody really was able to step up and take his place. You can't take his place, but step up and step into his shoes. And I'm gonna tell you something, that may be a bad example because there was some big shoes to fill.
Oh yeah.
We have to be able to step in. We got to, even if you can't do it by yourself, you better lock arms and step into staying together. But somebody's got to take the baton. You ever seen the 4x1 relay? I went
Oh
to my
yeah.
old high school about a couple months ago and I seen that our record was still on the wall. It's
Oh
the
wow.
4x1 relays. Everybody's running 100 meters, but you got to be able to hand that baton
That's right.
full speed, and you got
Yeah.
to be able to hand that baton. Rob Jackson is not slowing down. I'm going full speed right at you. But if I'm about to get sideswiped, I need somebody right there ready to get that baton because I got it in my hand. I'm gonna hand it off, and I need you to keep going full speed. And when you hand it off to the next person, they going full speed. You hand it off to the finish line. We got to go all the way through the finish line, right? And that's what this is about. That's why mentorship is important. We got to be able to hand that baton off going full speed.
And that is important, man, and a great reminder. So that's why I know you mentioned about mentoring the next generation, but I know it is important to be repeated, because no one will do this work forever.
And that's why
We
you have
all
text
have
too. You get your books and you get your texts and you start writing books and all of that kind of stuff because you got to be able to leave something for others to
correct,
go by. You got to leave a guide. So anybody who I talk to say they want to speak, you can't speak if you're not writing.
correct.
You have to be able to write. You got to put your words in the context and all that kind of stuff. But that makes a good leader is one who's not intimidated by others coming up behind them.
That is important, and I think as you mentioned that we are supposed to empower the next generation, and I think as you mentioned, especially with Martin Luther King and stuff like that. I think there was a gap in between, because I think what I've heard when I start looking into black male and leadership, I think we have been conditioned to think that enough space is not there,
Yeah.
but enough space is there. So we have to empower those. We can't think I'm the only one supposed to be here, and because if you say leave, who's going to carry on the work? And so it's important that we mentor the next generation, mentor those who are around us, to do the work, to carry on the work, because that's where leadership actually is. You doing the work so others can benefit from your effort, so they can get better to carry on and
And
even
also
to make.
I want to lead by example. I want to be an example that they can see because many times we live in fear and we need to see examples of success. And whether it's my son, my nephews, my children, mentees, others at conferences, I want them to see examples of what black male excellence look like and success. We
Yeah,
still can be articulate, we still can dress, but if we need to get down, we're gonna get down.
that's right.
They need,
Oh
you
yeah,
got best of both worlds, man. I'm not gonna let you just run all over me. It's not going down like that. But I
nope.
am going to use compassion. I'm still passionate about this work. I'm gonna use compassion and respect because I believe that you got to have love and trust, fairness, support, accountability, safety. That's what men. That's what builds great men. Love, trust, fairness, support, accountability, and safety. Be accountable for your actions, man. You do something wrong, just admit it. But walk with integrity. Stop lying so much. You got to walk with integrity. So love, walk in love. And it's hard to walk in love every day, but you can try because love is patient, it's kind, it doesn't boast, it doesn't keep records of wrongs. Love doesn't envy other people. Love doesn't keep records of wrongs. You got, and the last thing I want to say, we got to forgive each other. When you hurt your
Important.
brother, man, apologize. But if somebody apologize, man, forgive them. Even if they don't apologize, forgive them.
Yes,
We
sir.
got to walk in forgiveness if you're going to walk in love. So love, trust, fairness, support, accountability, and safety. Those are the 6 factors that bring brothers together and make us a stronger people.
Man, that those are really great pointers to remember, or characteristics to remember, to love each other, to learn to trust, or be trustworthy, demonstrate accountability, and provide safety and act with integrity. Those are important. And because when we act out of love, as you mentioned, it makes it difficult to envy others.
It does.
Because I love the work that you're doing. I can learn from it. I'm going to be inspired by your work. And if I'm inspired by your work, that means I'm going to be learning from you,
That's
which
right.
I believe is really, really important. But before we go, we're on top of the hour. And man, I have so many more questions that I want to ask.
We got to do part 2, man. Let's do part 2.
Part two, we definitely will do part two, because I also want to, maybe ask you a little bit more about, your recently published book.
Yeah.
So we can do part two. But before we go, yes, so they can see
We're
no
doing the
more
seminar on
excuses.
the 26th, February 26th at 7 p.m. Mothers, this is for you. We need mothers to sign up. February 26th, 6 p.m. Go to robertjacksonmotivates.com and sign up. and become a part of this movement, because we got to equip our mothers with what they need to raise successful young men.
Man, that is important, and then again, they need the support and the tools to help with their sons. Because we know the reality. There are a lot of single mothers out there, and they do need the guidance to be guide their sons, especially in the right way, so they can be all that they can be and don't succumb to the challenge. So we definitely can do part two. But before we go, I'll ask one more question.
Sure.
And this question is about ways to influence the next generation positively. What is the most impactful way our journeys inspire the next wave of leaders? How can we, as you say, you lead by example, which is perfect. But, how can we, demonstrate so we can influence the next generation?
Well, like I said before, walking with integrity, walking with confidence, walking with the attitude is this got to be done. But more importantly, if we want to influence the next generation, we got to be good listeners. We got to listen. Listen, I grew up in the era there wasn't no cell phones, wasn't no computers, wasn't none of that stuff. But now kids got technology right at their realm. They got computers, they got all kind of social media channels, including YouTube, and they're being taught by anyone who gets a microphone.
Wow.
So you got to walk out on faith, man. You can't be scared to speak the truth, because there's so much negative mess going on out here. But you got to listen to what they're dealing with. Listen to how they interact. Listen to the communication style. We got to learn how to communicate with this younger generation. Emotional intelligence means managing your emotions while managing somebody else's. So we got to be good listeners, and we got to be good stewards. We got to listen to them, and then we have to meet them where they are, because kids have more at their disposal, and we have to use what we have and what they have and bring it together to build for the future.
Man, that it is important, and I will acknowledge the part, as I say, good listeners, because it's important that we listen to them. Because if we're going to reach them, we have to understand them, and they also have to trust us. And we develop that trust by valuing their perspective. So as you mentioned, lead by example, communicate with them, understand them, knowing that they have something of value to share. Because if they don't believe that we believe in them, they may not trust us or open to us, so we can pour into them what we're supposed to, so they can be the best that they can be. Man, it just seems like we just started the conversation.
Oh, man, like we over already. What kind of this, man? We've been talking 10 minutes.
Man, I tell you, it feels like that. But that's how having great conversation. Sometimes the time just fly go
Part
by.
two.
Yeah, part two. We're gonna definitely do part two of this conversation. So the listeners, again, and that's the book that's coming up. I know, as you mentioned, the book signing is and the conversation is February 26th.
February 26th. We're going to be doing it online.
Okay.
So go on there and register at robertjacksonmotivates.com, and Empowered Moms. It's called Empowered Moms. Get on there and join us.
Man, that's great. So, Mr. Jackson, man, it's a pleasure, having you here on the Black Male Impact, and just to continue our impact as Black men, because it's important, that we step up and let the world see us in a positive light. Because if we're going to change the narrative, they must see us. And for the listeners who are here, I really appreciate you all taking the time to tune in today. This is going to be a continuous thing, where we have different conversation, but you'll definitely see Mr. Jackson again. I don't know when, but definitely you will see. We'll post it, so you will see. But again, thanks again for being here. The Black Man Impact is where positive changes are inspired. We'll continue to bring guests that we believe will share perspectives and insights that we all can benefit from as we continue on this journey. Thank you again for being here with us, and continue to support us so we can continue to do the work that makes a difference. Thanks, and looking forward to seeing you another time.
God bless you.
Appreciate it.